eminent presenter, adjunct professor Dr. Andrea Gurison is transport economist at CESISP University Milan Bicocca, CEO TRA Consulting. He is at Center of Research of CESISP at University Milano Bicocca in Italy, and he is adjunct professor in marketing management at Purdue University, University of Minnesota at Michigan State University, and University Southern California. He is working directly with airlines from Latin America, Middle East, and Europe, analyzing the evolution of the market and the customer needs. He is senior rail consultant for the World Bank, reforming railway sector in Asian and African countries. Dr. Andrea leads consultancy in the transport, telecommunication, digital and media sectors, and it has international customers from Europe, US, South America, Middle East, Asia, working with top management, CEO, and presidents in the strategic, financial, and operational decisions. He is also a member of the board of GBTA Italy. A very warm welcome to you, sir, and over to you, sir, for your presentation.
Good day, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to present a business case that is very interesting all around the world. We know that competition in rail is something quite new, especially in the passengers, the passenger vision. But what I want to present to you is the first case that we have in the high-speed rail in the world. We know that in India, there's a process of liberalization, but of course, Italy started in 2012 about the liberalization of high-speed rail sector. What we saw, thanks to my experience since 2009, working with different CEOs of NTV Italo. Italo is the first high-speed rail operator in the world in open access competition, that we start to have different elements that is very important to take in consideration for the liberalization. And what in my experience also was to go in the second country that opened to the liberalization in the high-speed rail, that was Korea, South Korea. And I also worked there in terms of how to develop the competition in terms of operation and so on. And then I went all around the world, also thanks to the World Bank. I also worked in China as a former visiting professor at China Academy Railway Science, and I worked with all the governments about how to have a great competition in the high-speed rail, but in general in the passenger segment for the rail industry. First of all, there's the first element that we have to consider, that is the high-speed rail line. What we saw in the last years, there's a strong increase of the number of kilometers that we have all around the world in terms of high-speed line, especially because China decided to make a big investment there. But what we saw that many countries all around the world, including India, they are making big investment to have these kinds of infrastructure. And how is managed that infrastructure is very interesting, because we have several business models. For example, we have vertical integration. Vertical integration, for example, is used in Japan or in Hong Kong, but in Japan especially, where the infrastructure manager is the same company of the railway undertaking, so are managed by the same company. And there's also other line of business like for example, real estate. We have vertical separation like in Spain, where infrastructure manager from a side, a railway undertaking from other side. There are two different companies. And this is very interesting to see, because it's completely different model. It is also used in Sweden or UK, for example. And then we have the holding structure like Germany, Italy, Austria, where we have a same company that is the holding company that manages the infrastructure manager and the railway undertaking. And then we have others operator that are using the same infrastructure of the incumbent to have competition. And what is very interesting, that European legislation went in the direction that we have to liberalize the market. And it's very interesting because, of course, this liberalization is very interesting because right now we are introducing this kind of liberalization, not only in Italy, but we have some case of liberalization in Spain right now. We have a liberalization from December in France also. So what is interesting that we introduce competition, even if we have still the incumbents there, is not that a complete different sector as we had, for example, in UK in the 90s. One of the main elements to have competition is to fix the access charge, so the cost for using the infrastructure. So we consider, it's quite technical, but I will not enter too much in detail, but this in my work, what is the total admissible cost for the infrastructure manager? And then what has to be calculated is the direct cost that has to be covered by the track access charge, a markup that has to cover another part of track access charge, and then there's a state fund that could help to cover all the costs, the total admissible cost of infrastructure manager. So what is very interesting that we are going in this direction of to have a very clear regulation about the access charge that is very important for the competition. A little bit what's happening all around the world. Europe, as I told you, we are opening the market since this year, finally. The 2020 was the year that was possible to open all the market, but this year is the real year where we start to have a real competition, apart Italy. We have a strong investment, for example, in Middle East. We see if we will have some high-speed rail operator also there. The Chinese market is the most developed in terms of kilometers, but of course, what is needed, that is a state-owned enterprise that needs efficiency. South Korea, they open to the competition. In Japan, for example, there's a private vertical integrated model. And then we have a many investment, for example, in Indonesia, in India, to develop the high-speed rail. High-speed rail also, of course, is in this moment also in Morocco, for example. And what is also included that maybe also US right now, they are going in the direction of high-speed rail finally with the infrastructure plan. South Korea is interesting example because in South Korea, they started the competition in 2016. We have this on the same line, two operators, apart a small part from Suzhou to a junction station. And on that line, we have two operators, that one is Korail, the other is SRT. And it's interesting that I made possible the memorandum of understanding between the new entrants and Italo NTV, that is the first high-speed rail operator in the world. European market, the example is Italy. I wrote some article, I made some analysis for some TV, newspaper. I try to explain that it's possible to have on the same infrastructure, different operator, at least two operators. And what is so that we have competition, we have strong benefits for the consumer. This is the real element, and also strong benefits for the incumbent that was able to innovate thanks to the push of the competition. And also it's possible to have low-cost model. For example, this is an article that I helped to write for this journalist on Bloomberg Business Week, that it's possible to see that a new business model is coming also in the railway, not just in the airline business model. And finally, what is also written here on Reuters, that is possible to enlarge, thanks to the competition, the high-speed rail market. And this is very, very interesting. And finally, the real example is Italy, what we call Italian revolution. Thanks to that, there's a real modal shift from aviation, for example, to the rail, thanks to the high-speed rail and the competition in the high-speed rail. So let's go very quickly to the Italian business case. What we saw is the Italo story. Italy is the first high-speed rail private operator, starting in 2012, the 28th of April 2012, where they start operation with 25 high-speed trains, 300 kilometers per hour. Right now, they have the delivery of other 26 train sets. So right now, there are 51 trains of high-speed rail just from the private operator. And then we have the state-owned enterprise. And the state-owned enterprise is named Trenitalia. And Trenitalia is a part of the holding that is named Ferrovie dello Stato International, Ferrovie dello Stato Italiane holding, that are managing the railway undertaking and infrastructure manager. On the same infrastructure, there's Italo NTV paying an access charge using the same infrastructure for the high-speed rail and also for traditional rail. So there's a mixed use of that. And Italo, for example, in 2018, before the crisis, they have already 88 services per day. They arrived to more than 116 services per day before COVID in 2019. But right now, they're coming back to another 116 services per day, connection per day, also right now that we have COVID. Even if the situation is not easy, but the possibility to expand the business, expand the network was very interesting, even if there was not the high-speed rail. Italo made a lot of investment, around $1 billion of investment before starting the business. The break-even point was in 2015. And what is interesting that they made a lot of investment, not only for train, but also for maintenance depot, for IT investment, station logistics, training of the people, and so on. And right now, Italo is a company that was bought in 2018 for around 3 billion of US dollar by GIP, that is Global Infrastructure Partner, is a private fund, is infrastructure fund from US, and there's also other shareholder like Allianz, for example. There's like the reinvesting shareholder. So there's a real company that right now is on the market. At the beginning was created by the main private industry, not only industry, but leaders like the Lavalle, Montezemolo, Punzo, together with the main bank, Intesa San Paolo, and the main insurance group that is Generali. Italo, before COVID, they have 20 million passengers, an EBITDA margin around 40%, and with a high load factor around 78%. That was really, really interesting because it's really high use of the infrastructure, but high use also of the train. Effects of competition. The cake is growing, so we have higher, bigger market thanks to Italo, but also thanks to the fact that Trenitalia, the incumbent, was able to enlarge their numbers of passengers, even if the average price was going down. The same what we saw in Spain, for example, right now, where we have a competition right now in Spain, and competition since May is very interesting because also in August 2021, during the COVID, on Madrid, Barcelona, where we have competition, the market is growing thanks to the second competitor. And at the end of next year, we will have another competitor, a third competitor that will enter in the market. And finally, we have a really strong competition. Finally, what is very interesting, thanks to the competition, that high-speed rail could be competitive against the aviation business model. Italo have a lower cost, for example, than the majority of low cost, and not only for the full service carrier in the aviation business. So Italo is very competitive in terms of cost, and the market was growing. We have more than 120% if you consider 2019 in terms of growth of the market with the same infrastructure. So no new infrastructure, the same infrastructure, the market is more than double. And even if the GDP level of Italy was exactly the same from 2011, year before liberalization, and 2018, 2019. We had a strong decrease of the price of the ticket, a very strong decrease of the price that helped to have a strong increase of the modal share. For example, for Rome, Milan, right now, the majority of the share is made by the rail, the high-speed rail. Right now, 80% is due to the rail. So thanks to all of you for the attention. I try to give a lot of information in this presentation. And what is very interesting from my side, that is really interesting that a competition is possible to have right now, and competition gave benefits to the consumer, gave benefits also to the incumbent that was able to develop, thanks to the competition, the quality of the service. So don't be worried about competition. Italy is the first example and is a successful example of competition. Right now, it's possible to go in this direction, not only in Italy, not only in Europe, but all around the world. So really thank you for the attention, and I hope that my information was useful for you.